What is up, my ninjas? I'm Strident, and I'm back with another video. Today, I want to talk about something that should be spoken about more often in videos, done by us collectors and, us toy fanatics, and that's just why we collect toys and, experiences, good experiences from our childhood that led us to collecting action figures or whatever toys or collectibles you get into. And, just I want to kind of get the conversation going where in the comments you guys, or even better would be video responses, you guys tell us about, the some of the best experiences you had with toys growing up that led to you being a lifelong collector, or even if it was something that happened recently, just best experiences that led you to do what you do and become a collector. For me, as I told you guys, Cops. That was a big deal for me. Cops and Crooks. When we were kids, we loved the TV show. I mean, they only played a couple episodes on repeat. It was like rotation. And we made up our own little kind of continuity with Cops based on the handful of Cops figures that we had. The same thing went with Batman. I loved Batman because I read the comics, but as far as live action, there wasn't anything other than the Adam West version. And then when the '89 Batman came out, I was like, oh my God. So kind of some of the things that I thought Batman should do, they were in the '89 Batman. Like I always felt Batman should kill some of those villains because number one, a lot of the villains are really lame. I mean, King Tut, like come on. And I'm talking about like from the Adam West time. They were just stupid. And it was like, get him out of there. Just either beat the living crap out of him, throw him off a building or something. I don't know. Do something and get him out of there. So a lot of times that's how my Batman and Robin were. They would like really go, hard on the villains that were kind of lame and just there so that you had numbers. And the ones that were actually a threat were the ones that, he fought on a more regular basis. But like, through playing with a lot of those figures, with the Cops figures, my Batman figures, my Hall of Fame. Do you remember the Hall of Fame 12-inch G.I. Joes? They had like Storm Shadow and a weird looking Snake Eyes, but it was the one that had the knives and he had this like bulletproof face mask. And then they had Flint, Duke, Stalker, Major Blood. It was a whole bunch of them. We got them early in the cycle, and I think I got Storm Shadow. My brother got Snake Eyes and Major Blood. He got Major Blood first, and we used to play with our little sister. Well, our sister. She's my little sister and his older sister. But she had a ton of Barbies, and before this, we would play with her, but we would make the Kens into like action heroes and shit. So we'd be putting like bandanas on them and trying to find makeshift weapons, or like if we had like an 8-inch action figure that came with a pistol or something, we'd give the pistol to the Ken doll and like use a rubber band or twist tie or tape to make him hold it, stick it to his hand. We did all kinds of stuff to try to make them something palatable for us because we didn't like how, Ken's just a rich guy that hangs out with hot chicks and really doesn't do anything, whereas this was like the Planet Hollywood days, with Schwarzenegger and Van Damme and freaking Seagal and Stallone and all of them. And we wanted to play with, 12-inch figures that had that kind of action hero appeal. So yeah, we would do all that shit to try and make them cool. And then finally, cool G.I. Joes showed up. Because these were like, I want to say for us, this was the first time that the 12-inch Joes actually looked cool, because all the years prior we had been playing with a Real American Hero figures, and the 12-inch figures that were available back then were just standard G.I. Joe. Just regular soldiers. They weren't all sci-fi or outlandish. There definitely were no ninjas. And then, boom, these show up. And we just couldn't believe it. So we get, Major Blood, then I got Storm Shadow, and then my brother got Snake Eyes, and we were reliving Shinobi 3, and we had Major Blood going on these rampages, and we created like a police department with the 12-inch figures, and we, because because you could take off their clothes and mix and match the clothing. I had Storm Shadow. I would pretend that, because American Ninja was out back in those days. I would pretend that, he was dressed down, even though the head had the mask on and you couldn't take the mask off. So he'd be wearing like a t-shirt and some freaking jean shorts and some boots. And he still had his fucking balaclava or his ninja mask on. It was funny. I mean, when I think back to it, it was so dumb, but when your imagination is firing on all cylinders, you don't really care because you just have the vehicle or the instrument through which you want to, explore this concept or this idea or, this thing you were inspired to try and play out in your room on your own terms, Like I've told you guys so many times, I'm such an action junkie. I grew up on action movies. It's my thing. It's like the one thing that like me, my brother, and my dad, all of us were on the same page about. If it was an action film and it was a good one, like the old Police Story movies or Crime Story or Death Wish, freaking some good old westerns, some old good kung fu films, especially stuff done by Sammo Hung or stuff with Yuen Biu in there and whatnot, and Bruce Lee, of course. Like we were there. So when I started collecting, my brother saw what I was collecting. He wanted to get in, and I wanted him to get in on it because I couldn't act all of the figures myself. It's much easier when someone else acts the other half of the figures, so you two can play off of one another and amaze each other. And it's fun. And when my best friend would come over, it was even better because him and I would play with GI Joes, but it was just two of us. When my little brother was involved, it was even better because now there's 3 sets of hands to control some of the characters, and I didn't have to always be my favorite good guy and then all the rest of the bad guys, you know what I mean? Or my favorite bad guy, which was Alley Viper, and then act all the soldiers and shit, just because, my best friend wanted to show me something. Like, hey, look, watch what I can do with so-and-so. I figured this out the other day, But that's where we came up with the whole Action Land thing. At the end of the Cops, the end of my Cops reviews, the finale video, it said for Edmund and Naomi, that's my brother and sister, and I said Action Land lives. What we had in our house, the way our house was set up, we used to pretend that my sister's room was, we called it No Man's Land because there were really hardly any men. She had a handful of Kens, and it was all Barbies, and She-Ra, and like it was all girl stuff because in the 80s things were marketed heavily towards one or the other. So we would bridge the gap by having like certain characters would be married or be going out with certain girly, characters or female counterparts in No Man's Land. So like that was the nickname for the place. And then our room, my brother and I, it was Action Land because you come in and there's tanks and there's under the bed, the Ninja Turtle was the freaking sewer. I had it set up to look like the turtle's lair. I could make my bed into, we had bunk beds, so I was on the bottom bunk bed, he was on the top bunk bed. I had these cases that I would set up in a certain manner and these props that I would use to just make my bat cave. So, the what is it? The stuffing on the top or on the underside of the box spring for the top bunk had little, fuzzy pieces that kind of hang down. Like I said, we weren't rich. We definitely weren't poor, but we weren't rich. So some stuff we messed with it, messed it up in some cases, and we just had to live with it for a while because my parents were like, shit, as long as it still works, that's what you're going to use. So we let our imaginations kind of dictate what that stuff was going to be. So what we did was So there's that fuzzy stuff underneath. It was like a covering that was supposed to go underneath and hide the springs for the box spring. And I used to pick at it sometimes when I was bored. And when we switched, my brother had picked at it a lot too. So it was hanging down and stuff, you know. So like during the day when we weren't playing with Batman and stuff, I would just tuck it under the bars that hold the mattress and box spring in place. When we played with Batman, I would just pull those things out, and they look like stalagmites or stalactites. I think it's stalactites, and it just added to the overall look of an idea of the Bat Cave. So yeah, I could makeshift a Bat Cave at whenever we wanted to play with Batman. My brother had he would set up his sheets and his pillow and his he had all these mega blocks, and he would make the Fortress of Solitude up on the top bunk, and I mean, we just had shit all over the place that was just all action and just raw boys and man and testosterone and, you know, explosions and and so we called it Action Land sometimes, you know, like just as a joke kind of. We even had to teach. We were struggling to teach my little sister how to make machine gun sound effects or gun sound effects at all. She could make a laser gun sound psst, but she couldn't make gunshots, you know what I mean? So she had all these characters that she made bad guys that she would you know, swipe one of the guns, the G.I. Joe guns, and then have her own little terrorist bad guy person that the police in no man's land, quote unquote, were trying to deal with, and her gunshots were pew pew pew, and we'd be cracking up. We're come on, you know, we want to hear the shots, you know. We want you to go nuts, you know. They're shooting, they're capping folks, you know. Pop, pop, pop. I want to hear it. I want to get amped, you know what I mean? So because I said, we were super dorks about it. I mean, I'm still a dork. I still get into this, and when me and my 2-year-old can do all the kinds of sound effects. He could do super powered punch sound effects where they get hit and he's like, it's freaking hilarious when you watch it just unfold in front of your face. And excuse that sound, I've got ice on my shoulder. Pretty much, like I said, we had Action Land, which was all the boys stuff, all the superheroes, supervillains, etc. That was in our room. No Man's Land was my sister's room. And then there was a point where my dad, we had a cool attic, and it was the covering for the inner portion of the attic for the ceiling and stuff was black. So we would pretend it was space because it was the highest point in the house, and it was all black in there. You know what I mean? The walls were all black. There was the wooden slats against it, but it was all black. And so you know, sometimes something would happen and Superman would fly up and we'd run up into the attic and play in the attic, and it was cool because it was space. The only thing that sucked is it would get hot up there when it was summertime, so he'd come down real quick because we didn't really stay up there like that. And then every now and then, you know, we would play in the basement, and so our basement was it was finished for the most part, but the ground when you first come down the steps was a little uneven because it was concrete. And we had this, when we got that old house, there was a really old 1930s or 40s refrigerator, the kind with the lock, the latch and the lock on the outside, but it was real big and kind of round. So we used to pretend it was the Technodrome, and it had all the levels because the shelves were still in there. So we would my parents didn't use it. It was too heavy for us to pick it up and take it out. You know, so we just left it there. It was unplugged and everything. And we would play in there with, you know, my parents didn't want us to. And a lot of times they didn't know that we were doing this. But we very responsibly used to pretend that was the Technodrome. So pretty much the basement was underground because it was really underground. I mean, this is what you do when you're little, you know? So we left all the Ninja Turtles bad guys, you know, Shredder and Krang and stuff. They were all in there. We built you know, like bases and forts and shit in the basement that we would leave up because no one actually hung out. Like my dad used to hang out down there around this time, but then he started working more, and then he moved all his stuff up to the attic. So we had complete run of the mill for the basement. So we just did what we wanted. So a lot of times we play with our GI Joes down there, Ninja Turtles, Transformers, the like 3 Transformers that I had at the time, Battle Beasts. We'd be playing with them down there because it looked like the kind of terrain that you had battles on, you know. And then, like, you know, every now and then we'd come up with like a plot where we could, for some reason, we were allowed to stay in the living room, and we'd just bring figures down and camp, or we'd bring like the 12-inch GI Joes and have them on a mission, so they'd have all their gear, like camping gear and shit with them, and they'd be like staking out something, or you know, like making their way to some bigger battle. And all these things, like whenever I see an action figure, there's like a good action figure, you know, because when I look at an action figure, I always think potentially I'm gonna be able to have so much fun with this figure, because if it's really durable and posable, then I can play with him with my sons. If it's, you know, like an SH Figuarts, then I'll think about stuff I'll do myself, you know, like my own photography, or like me sitting here and choreographing a fight or something, or, you know, like a plot that I started, you know, years ago that I never finished, you know, because sometimes when I'm bored, I will try out an idea that I want to use in something else that's more official. And, you know, I'll see how far I can go with it. And if it gets boring really quick, then it's probably a bad idea and it's not good. If I just keep on playing and I don't stop, then that means it's some good shit. Kind of like when I first got my Soda Street Fighters. Man, I came up with so many ideas to rewrite, like the way that the Second World Warrior tournament happened and who fought who. Then I fought through all that with all these characters, because, you know, it was essentially, I would get a couple, like get a wave or a round as they were called, and I'd play with them, and then I'd have to wait for the next round for the story to go further. So, you know, I would do all this stuff, and then finally when I got everybody, it was like, now we're in this should be the Street Fighter 3 phase of the story, but they only made like 2 or 3 of the Street Fighter 3 characters, if you don't count Ken and Ryu and Akuma. So I had to come up with my own, like, after Street Fighter 2 story, you know? It's just one of those things, though, but whenever I get a figure, especially a durable figure, I think about all the possibilities of all the things you could do that are fun, you know? Let's make Ultraman team up with Superman, like I did in the pictures of Ultraman Ginga in my review. He was back-to-back with Superman, because I'm like, you know, that would be awesome if Japan's Superman essentially teamed up with America's Superman, you know? Let's have, you know, Saber team up with the Ventaran Knights, you know, or because she just looks cool sitting next to them, and she even has that dope-ass bike. And, you know, so on my shelf, I have them all together because that was the idea, you know? Let's have He-Man and Thundercats and the Lord of the Rings characters all exist in the same world. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's all weird, goofy stuff that, like, it's fun when you get into it and you let your inner child just take over. And, you know, you play and you can have freaking, you know, Aragorn fighting freaking, I don't know, Grizzlor or something. You know what I mean? I mean, he fights Urukai. Why can't he fight some big old hairy ogre of a thing? You know, this bear person. I'm not saying he would necessarily win, but, you know, he can definitely hold his own. So it's not too far-fetched, you know? And I like that kind of stuff, you know? You're playing with your cops, and then freaking, I don't know, Copperhead shows up. And it's like, oh, shit. Or, well, Deathstroke was hired by someone to kill some, you know, particular official, and now the cops are trying to protect that official, and they're trying to deal with Deathstroke. I mean, it's cool cross-play type stuff that it's kind of the essence of a lot of people's childhoods. Now, I will say that's how I sometimes do things. And growing up, that's kind of how we did, because we didn't have the entirety of any one collection. So we had to. Otherwise, we would kind of just be stuck playing with, like one figure, or like you'd be playing like 2 or 3 figures because you only have 2 or 3 related characters from this franchise. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times it was out of necessity that you would cross-play, because you want your characters to have something to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, I had Batman fighting RoboCop villains because I didn't have any Batman villains besides the Joker. Because when I was a kid, you could only get Joker, Penguin, Riddler, and Mr. Freeze. And that was until later on when Kenner made the movie figures, and then they added Catwoman to the mix. And then the animated series came many years later, and you ended up with Ra's al Ghul and all the plethora of Batman characters that we got later on. So yeah, I would use. Matter of fact, I remember I had Lord Dredd. All 3 of us. My mom got all 3 of us the same Lord Dredd figure because he was on sale at ShopRite. And you know how back then they used to have action figures up at the front when you're checking out? So she figured, we are all watching Captain Power, so, I'll get this for them. So she gets that for us, and I was like, at first I made him a good guy because he had a cape, and I was like in that kind of dumb phase. Then I was like, you know what, I'm going to make him a bad guy. And since we have 3 of them, if he gets destroyed, then yours can take his place, and then if that one gets destroyed, then yours can take his place. So that's how we ended up playing with him. And it was fun, too, because I remember Batman and Superman teaming up to fight him. And he was posable. He was way more posable than... He was more like a G.I. Joe. Like today's G.I. Joes, because he didn't have an O-ring. But he could do the splits both ways, unlike Kenner's and Toy Biz's Batman and Superman, who could only... They had T-joints, where they can only move forward and back. And... he just seemed so superior to them, you know what I'm saying? So it was fun coming up with reasons for them to fight, and then actually coming up with, plotting out how the fight's going to work. And then, because he was cybernetic and he liked to digitize people, we made him do to people what that computer in Superman 3 did to the one chick that fell in there. You know how it, like, turned her into a robot, bizarro-looking thing? That's pretty much what he did. To anyone he kidnapped and made them part of his army. And he was going to do that to the world. I mean, we had these really simple but, like, fun plots. And, I don't know, I miss sometimes how easy it was for us to jump into that mode. I mean, now as an adult, obviously, you have responsibilities and you have your job. And it's hard to go to work, then come home and immediately jump into that, because my son needs to see me first. My little son, the older son might need something, first. Usually when I come home, we're all about to eat, so I'll get food ready and change, make sure I empty out my son's potty. Little things, like the stuff that you really would rather not be doing. But in some cases, there's some parts of it that I would rather not do because it's like chores. But like the interactions with them is awesome, because then we can get into this geek mode where we just, kind of goofily just hang out and shoot the shit. And I love that. That's the part that's the best. But, there's all that. There's the dog. There's, washing dishes and blah, 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 yakety schmackety. And sometimes by the time you're done with all that, you just don't have the energy to actually sit down and start playing. And then, when it's during school day, like the school year, there's homework, there's, PTO, PTA, there's, parent-teacher conferences, there's, you know, homework that he was supposed to do that he didn't do, that now you got to sit down with him and make sure he does it. It's like all these things that take away from your ability to sit down and lose yourself in your figures and stuff the way you once could do. What is awesome, though, is when you do get the opportunity to do so, when I actually get the chance to sit down and it's just me in the house and I can, you know, totally just lose myself, it's amazing. Because then you lose track of all time. I remember one summer, it might have been last summer. It was one of the summers, I think it was last summer because I had a bunch of FI stuff. I forgot what holiday it was, but the wife and the kids went up to the in-laws for something. I think, if I remember correctly, she told me before she got off work on Friday, and the idea was they were going to go up and stay Friday night, Saturday the whole day, Sunday afternoon, and then come back Sunday night. That was the best way. So as soon as she left, like I was tired and I'm like laying around and I'm like, ugh, body's so sore, my brain hurts, I don't want to do anything. Everything was so sore, I'm all beat up, I'm like, ugh. And then as soon as she left, as soon as they left, I go up into my man cave, and it was as if I was possessed by my younger self. I pulled out members of the JSA, pulled out some bad guys that I still have from back in the day, and I started just playing, you know, like playing like a little kid, you know. I'm sitting down on the floor, I'm setting up boxes so that they could be like walls and buildings and stuff, and the bad guys can knock them down or whatever, you know. I'm looking around for you know, regular people, like usually Speed Racer is amongst the regular people. So he gets saved a lot. He's like ordinary guy in that episode of Darkwing Duck. If you guys remember that shit. But he's amongst a bunch of the regular people, you know. And I'm sitting there doing all kinds of shit, and I'm enjoying myself, and I'm like, wow. You know, when a couple hours had passed, it was like 3 in the morning. I didn't even eat dinner because I'm up here geeking out. I get a call. That's what made me stop. She calls me just to, you know, check on me because she's letting me know she had forgot to call when they got in. So she called a little afterwards just to say goodnight. And I'm laughing while I'm on the phone because I'm like, man, I totally lost track of time. I'm sitting there playing with my damn action figures, you know? So it's one of those things. It's not that we're immature and we can't, you know, we can't let go of this thing. No, it's just a window back to our former selves. You know what I'm saying? Like, it reminds you of a time when things were a little bit more carefree. You didn't have as many responsibilities, and your imagination ruled. I mean, as a creative, my imagination, it does a lot. You know, I use it a lot. But my imagination doesn't rule right now because the creative portion is a part of my daily routine. It's a part of it. It's not the routine. Now, if it was the routine, which is what I'm working towards, I would be so happy. You guys need to get me to like a couple million views so I can make the creative part the routine, and you guys could see all that shit. Because I'm telling you, you know, I'm just putting that out there. But, you know, it's not the routine. So there's a lot of things that you know, ideas will go in, will pop up in my head and then totally just into the wind. And I'm like, fuck, you know, I had this cool idea the other day, but I totally forgot it because I didn't get to do anything with it when I had the idea. I mean, it's gotten to the point where I write down my ideas so that on a later date, I can actually do what I wanted to do. I mean, like those G.I. Joe shorts that I've been talking about since forever, I'm going to finally get to finish that shit, like, very soon because I'm taking a break from YouTube. You know what I mean? For a little while, like I told you guys. A lot of my comic book stuff, you know, I've been dealing with all this arthritis craziness, and I mean, it's a bitch. I mean, it sounds like arthritis is a very small thing, but I've been dealing with that stuff, and I finally got a handle on it. I can actually I'm going to draw up so much before the next big attack, because I don't want to end up screwed, you know what I mean? Because the kind of arthritis that I'm dealing with usually fucks up your joints and your bones and stuff, and you know, so as I get older, I have to watch out for that. So I got to be careful, and I got to try and do as much as I can do while I'm still fairly young, you know what I'm saying? And my bones aren't all jacked up yet. But long story short, we have responsibilities and we have other things that take away from what used to be an every day, all day, because we daydreamed at school, you daydream at home, but then you can also play, you know, so your daily life just takes away from what used to be your everything. This is how you always did stuff. So the ideas come and go quickly, and you know, the opportunities to use those ideas come and go quickly, and you know, you don't really get the opportunities that you used to get to do that stuff. So when you do see an action figure, momentarily you're brought back to that point, and you're like, damn, I remember when I used to blah 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 blah, and it was so awesome. I would love to do that again. Maybe I'll do that with this guy, you know, or this girl, or these figures, you know, these characters. And it's like the possibilities are endless, and that's what makes you so geeked. I remember when I was collecting my DCUC figures, that beginning part of Justice League Unlimited's intro, where it shows that long lineup, like what I did in the I'm a DC video, that was something that I was actually thinking about. That was in the back of my mind when I was collecting those figures. I shit you not. From the first time, from when I completed my Justice League, the Big Seven, and moved on to other characters, I was thinking, man, soon I will be able to have that lineup, or a lineup like the one in the beginning of Justice League Unlimited. I was literally thinking about that because I wanted to like put them all together and take a really cool picture with them, you know? And I finally was able to do it. Same thing with Kamen Riders. Like right now, I'm working towards the 13 Ryuki Riders, or the Vantaran Knights. And I'm 2 away from being done. And I'm looking at them and I'm like, man, there's so many team images that I want to take with them. And I got to wait till I get the last 2. But like, that was one of the things that I was thinking about when I was collecting them, is that it'd be so awesome to recreate those team images that came from various episodes of the series or promos for the series, because I mean, they look so awesome together. The same goes for, you know, my SIC collection. It's very small right now, but there's a gang of SICs that I really, really, really want, and one of these days I'm going to get them. And I'm going to have, my shelf is going to look so much better. Because right now I have the 4 SICs that I have sitting on the shelf on bikes. And, well, 2 on bikes and 2 on foot. And then they're surrounded by all these bikes that I collected for them to ride because they're the right scale. But I only have a handful of SICs. So, you know, the dream needs to continue growing. And once it does, it will still be very awesome. So it's one of those things, you know. I collect these figures because they remind me and they help me stay in touch with my inner 11-year-old or my inner 12-year-old, whatever, you know. It allows me to, a lot of times, just kind of disappear into that world so that for a while I can recharge. And then when I'm done, come back to this one and be ready to deal with what I got to deal with. So, you know, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. It's the way it's been. It's probably the way it's going to be because I'm too old to change right now, at least in that respect. How does this work for you guys? You know, like I said in the beginning, I want to know. I want to hear from you. I want you guys to make video responses and, you know, no excuses. Don't tell me, I don't have a camera. Your phone has a camera. Don't say, oh, I don't have a microphone. Your phone has a microphone. You know, upload it from your phone directly to YouTube and let me know as a video response. Let all of us know what your process, what your, you know, how you use your imagination, what you do with your figures. Because there's a lot of people who collect figures because it's a compulsion and it's not, there's no love. They do it because, you know, something compels them to do it, and then they want to either sell them on eBay or they want to just have boxes upon boxes upon boxes of figures so you can say you have the figure. But there are also people out there who collect because there's something deeper. You know, you collect these figures because they help you stay in touch with your inner kid. You know what I mean? They make you feel good about they remind you about a certain period that makes you feel good. They, you know, just a number of things. And I want to know what those things are, you know? This is one of those conversations that, like, I think about this, but when the time comes to ask people, I always forget about this particular question, and that's why I'm asking this. Because I was looking through my old videos, because I also want to do kind of a overview or a look back at some of my older videos, or at my channel back in the day. And I want to talk about, I mean, I noticed, I should say, that like when I was doing the cops videos, there's some of the few videos next to maybe the Batman figure ones where I had stories that went along with the figures of what we did with them and like things that we figured out while we were collecting them and such, you know. And I have to believe that there are other people out there who have similar stories, you know, like they collected something, that something helped them through a time or something, you know what I'm saying? There was some connection, something that was, you know, figured out, some hurdle jumped over, or just some fun time that was had with this certain figure. So get at me. Let me know what that shit is. I don't care how goofy it is. Let me know what it is. I want to talk about that shit. I want to hear it because we're geeks. This is what we do. Don't hold that mess back. Just let it out. So anyway, I'm Strident. You guys have been great. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And I will catch you on the next video. Peace outside.